Okay, getting started in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to Sustainable Success. Hope everyone's having a great week, the first week of May. God, where is the time gone? But again, if you're new to Sustainable Success, we're glad that you found us here at the Voice America Influencers channel. And we also encourage you to check us out on our other platforms, on Apple, on Spotify, and then also on our Facebook page at Sustainable Success 2017. There you'll find many of our great guests that have shared their words of wisdom and insights and experience, helping you to elevate your personal success in business to the next level. We encourage you to check it out, become engaged, and your feedback is crucial as we take that information very seriously and helping to bring in guests and experts that are going to help move the needle in your business and personal success. We are committed to that. If any of you are having regular listeners are having any questions in regards to moving your business forward, feel free to reach out to us at chris@christophersalem.com. Today's show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct is a new social media community platform dedicated to bringing together alumni from all different generational types, an opportunity to not only rekindle old relationships, but perhaps meet new people for the first time that went to your school. This is also a great way to perhaps lead you to your next job opportunity, perhaps a new business venture. And it takes all the noise out of social media, none of the bothersome notifications that we get. So you get to come in authentically on your time and get to share the types of content and the types of engagement that you choose to interact with here. It also comes with a wide variety of affinity services that you would not be access to in other areas. So this could be for insurance for your business and then your personal family as well. Feel free to reach out to them at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. Well, we got a great show for you today, and we are going to be talking about a topic that I love around leadership. It's called Leadership Lessons from Half Court. And I'm going to be taking notes here today because my son is an avid basketball not only a fan, but plays on 2 teams. So I'm always at his games, and I love when it comes to leadership when it relates to sports. And you got the man here today that's going to deliver that. His name is Coach Jim Johnson. And before I introduce Coach Jim and when he talks about leadership lessons from half court, I'm just going to give you a brief background about him. Based upon what transpired in a few short moments in early 2006, Coach Jim is now an authority on the subject of realizing your dreams. And his many public speaking appearances, the Rochester, New York resident relates his role in a basketball game that got Hollywood calling. He also emphasizes the importance of teamwork and sportsmanship, delivering his talks with a heart-filled style that has brought audiences to their feet. Coach Jim has developed winning high school basketball teams for over 30 years, taking over 3 losing varsity programs and turning them into winners in a short period of time. On his 428 career victories, one in particular will surely never be duplicated. On February 15th of 2006, Coach Jim made the kind-hearted gesture of inserting his autistic manager, Jason McElwain, now known to the world as J-Mac, into Greece Athena High School's final home game, which the Trojans won 79-43. J-Mac scored 20 points in just over 4 minutes, including 6 3-point baskets to become an instant national celebrity. Coach Jim also was featured in a major news outlets around the country. To make the Hollywood ending complete, Greece Athena captured the first Section 5 title of Coach Jim's career a few weeks later. And Jim has been a guest on many shows, including ESPN, CNN, Good Morning America, and Oprah. He's also the author of the book, A Coach and a Miracle. And without further ado, we welcome Coach Jim Johnson to the show. Jim, how you doing today?
Great, Chris. I hope I can live up to the intro. Thank you.
I've been known to really do that. I love my guests, and we always like to make sure that, hey, you're taking the time to be here today to share your words of wisdom. And this is the least we can do to really put you out there. And we want to thank you for being here and taking time out of your busy day to join us.
My pleasure. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, Jim, you and I have had conversations. I've read your book, and I love everything you do. I'm, being an avid sports fan, basketball, my son's favorite sport. He plays it pretty much year round. I love to talk about the concept of leadership personally, especially when we're around the game of basketball or other sports. Let's just talk about, a little bit about the background, maybe perhaps, the story around, the lessons you learned at half court. And then we can maybe get into some of the leadership keys that you really like to stress that are important as it applies to not only in the game, in the game of sports, but also in real life and again, in the business world.
Yeah, excellent. So I'll start by saying that leadership is challenging. And I think sometimes we forget that leadership's important in almost every endeavor. Whether you're coaching a high school basketball team like I did for 3 decades, or running a business, or leading an association, or leading a family, or leading yourself is where I always talk. You got to start by leading yourself. And one of the things I really try to stress, because one of my major goals now in life is to try to help young and emerging leaders, because I think there's a real void in leadership, is that you got to make leadership a study. And that was something that I did not do very well early in my career. I stumbled out of the gate. I got a head coaching job at 25 years old. And in my bio, we don't bring up the fact that I actually took over 4 programs. The first one was a disaster. we were 1 in 18. And as I kid people, I didn't like what the administration had to say to me after the season. And of course, what they said to me is, we don't want you back. And But fortunately, I learned a lot from that. I got a really good mentor, a guy named Bill Van Gundy. You being in New York City, you probably know that name from his son.
Jeff Van Gundy, yeah.
And his son Stan, that have both been head coaches in the NBA. But Coach Van Gundy helped me get back on my feet after that opening disaster as a head coach. And fortunately, then I was able to take over 3 programs where we did turn it around and got things going. In my last 27 years, I was a head coach of 2 high schools in my hometown of Greece, New York, which has close to 100,000 people. And we have 4 high schools. I actually went to one of the high schools and was a head coach at 2 of the others. So I hit almost all 4 of them in my career. And but one thing I really encourage people is that, we forget often as coaching that, yes, I certainly needed to know how to teach skills and plays for basketball. But something I really have tried to push with young coaches is spend more time learning about how to be an effective leader, how to teach leadership, and how to build teams. Because if you put that all together and get the right people on your team, then you got a chance to be very successful. It's always, I always talk about, as a leader, you got to have character and you got to have competence. So certainly you've got to understand whatever you're trying to do. In my case, understand the game of basketball. But really understanding leadership principles is so very important if you're going to be successful.
Yeah, I agree. And there's so many things, like you said, that the game brings out and can teach us, and how we can carry that into our everyday lives and also into the work world, whether if you're working for somebody, or you're managing people, or you're running your own business. What would you say, like, the game of basketball, Jim, like when you think about leadership in general, what is the one thing that really stands out that you feel like you've learned, not only playing the game, but, coaching the game for quite some time, that really stands out, and you see kind of like with the people you've coached in the past, you've seen it play out in their lives and their careers?
Well, I think we could relate, basketball, because it's a team sport, and the teams that are usually the best are the teams that have, you can use the word chemistry, but they play well together, and they work well together. And that's overlaps in any kind of endeavor, whether you're running a business, a church. If your people aren't working together for the same cause, then you're going to have issues. And so I think that's something that I really learned is, I used to tell our players that, for us to be successful, yes, we need talented players. But I just gave an illustration. I was in an interview about a week ago, and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are 2 of probably the top 5 players in basketball, and they were eliminated in 4 games. So it just goes to show you that, yes, talent is important, but if the talent doesn't mesh, then and don't do the things like, one of the things, and I'm not here to pick on the Nets in particular, other than just to say they didn't have great chemistry and they didn't do some of the basic things, like they guarded very poorly. And if you don't play defense, you don't have success.
There you go.
So I think the huge lesson is that what I really learned from basketball is how to unite people for a common cause, and really trying to keep them focused on like when we talked about players and how we picked players, I think one of the things I challenge people is, do you really understand what you're looking for your people on your team? And we were very clear. Obviously, talent was one, but there were three other big factors. We looked for people that were very passionate about the game of basketball, because we found if they're passionate, they wanted to get in the gym, and they followed our formula, what we called CANI, constant and never-ending improvement. Number two is that they were people that were great workers. That we always talked about, we're going to work as hard as we can every single day to be the best team we got. And then the third thing is that we wanted we over me guys. We wanted guys that thought about the team over their own individual statistics. And so those are the things we really focused on. And just a little sidelight, you mentioned the JMac story. The reason that JMac was kept in our program is he didn't have enough talent. That's why he didn't make their team. But he had those other three ingredients, and we admired that so much, that he was a we over me guy, that he had a great work ethic. He loved basketball, and he loved, helping people. So and he ended up being a great teammate, even though he only played in that one game. So it just goes to show, I really encourage leaders to have clarity of what they look for when they're bringing people onto their team.
I love that. And what you made me think, Coach Jim, about it's not always about the talent and the skill, right? It's about how are we thinking, our mindset, how do we communicate? Like you said, how are we engaging each other? Like you said, with the Nets, they didn't seem like they were engaged with each other, and it reflected poorly in their defensive coverage with the other team. So if you could shed some insight about that, because I know you're going to talk later about your 7 leadership keys, which I want to get into the second segment a little bit, but right. Talk about, I guess, that, and how sometimes those things might be, obviously long-term, be more important than just the talent itself.
Well, I think one of the things that I heard someone say this once, and I think there's a lot of truth is, does your team have an identity? In sports, is that an identity going to give you an opportunity to win a championship? Okay, so the Nets' identity, I don't know what it was, because they didn't guard anybody. They didn't really play very well together. They were very talented. I mean, Kevin Durant, debatably the best player in the league still, and Kyrie Irving is certainly a magnificent offensive player. But they just didn't synchronize those things, and they didn't have an identity. Where you look at the Boston Celtics right now, and I'd say they have identity. They have identity that they're going to play relentlessly defensively. They're going to share the ball and make the extra pass. And it's debatable where you could say, I mean, they've certainly got some talent. And you don't make the NBA.
Oh, yes, exactly.
But at the same time, you know what? I don't know that their best player is as good as the 2 best players for the Nets. So
yeah,
so I think that's where that old word synchronize, the ability to have the sum of the parts bigger than the whole is really powerful.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And that identity is so important, because it's something that, again, correct me if I'm wrong, it just seems like, when people are communicating, whether if it's verbal, nonverbal, or body language, whatever it may be, it just seems that kind of everybody knows their role and duties. They know when to be cross-functional when required. And because of that, they're going to make less mistakes, and they're going to be more alert to what's happening right in that moment. So if you were to equate that from basketball to business or anything, would it be something similar, the same thing?
I totally agree. I think you said it very well, is that, Jim Collins used to say, you not only got to get the right people on the bus, you got to get them in the right seats. And, that was something that we spent a lot of time with our players clarifying what their roles. Not everyone was going to take the most shots. That was going to happen to be the guy who was probably our best player, right? But at the same time, if we could get everyone to buy into and excelling in their roles, like we might have one of the guys, I might say, John, you can play a lot for us if you excel in your role to be a defensive stopper. And you get that young man to buy into that. And if he buys into it, you got something really good there. If he doesn't buy into it, you got to find somebody else, right? Get him off the bus. So I think those are the things that, is really important when you're developing a team, is that, use people's strengths and then encourage them to excel in their strengths. And that doesn't necessarily, and you got to, that goes back to one of my statements before, you got to find we over me guys. Because otherwise, if you're all about playing for yourself first, that usually leads to disaster.
No, I agree. And I love what you said about really honing in on your strengths. Because, when you look at even in the business world, a lot of times people are conservative. They're afraid to make a mistake because they feel like they're more, either they assume or it's directed from somebody above them. They have to do something they feel uncomfortable or they're really not good at to begin with, rather than something that they're good at. And in this case, when you said understanding your role and duties, that you can leverage what you're really good at and really make a difference for the team in that area.
Absolutely. And, I think that's something you really got to encourage. And, one of the things we talk about, and we'll get in probably a little bit into about, is how to build trust. And one of the things we talk about in building trust is that you got to catch people doing what they're excelling and what I call catching them doing the right thing, and make sure you praise them and praise them specifically. For example, like, if one of our players dives on the floor for a loose ball, I'm going to go over and go, John, that was great effort. I love how you dove on the floor for a loose ball. That's what championship teams do. So everybody hears that, and they say, whoa, okay. He was very specific.
Absolutely.
So.
Wow, this is some great stuff. Well, we got more to come from Coach Jim. We are just getting in. We just kind of built the foundation here when we talk about leadership and, again, some of the lessons he's learned at half court. But when we come back, we're going to be talking about some of the key these leadership keys. I'm not going to even tell you the number yet. I'll let him cover that when we come back after the break. But we got to go to the break right now. So stay put. Get your notebooks and pads out, whatever, pens. And when we come right back, we're going to dive into those leadership keys. And we'll be right back after the break.
All right, you guys are all clear. I'm going to just save this
right.
and then I'll bring you right back.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So great. That was awesome, Jim. So he's just going to just put the final, download everything that we did here.
Okay.
So in the second segment, we'll dive into the 7 key leadership keys.
Yep.
And then you could go through each one, and if you want to give examples and
sure
stuff like that. And if we need the third segment to finish it up, that's fine. I mean, there's no thing. But yeah, I think this will be really good, and want to make sure that at the end we let people know where you are. We could promote your book or whatever is good for you. I want to make sure we do that.
Absolutely.
All right. Let me just see if they're ready to go.
Okay.
Are we good or everything?
Hold on, just uploading real quick.
Sure. And Jim, what I'll do is with the video recording, I'll send you the Dropbox link. Like I have a coaching client right after this, but soon as I'm done with that call, I'll send you the Dropbox link that you have. You could download it on your side within 24 hours.
It's all good now.
Okay.
All right. We are ready to go. If you are, you're all set, Jim?
All set.
All right.
Okay. All right, coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back to Sustainable Success. If you're just joining us, we're here with Coach Jim Johnson. We're talking about leadership lessons from half court. Again, you can listen to this show in its entirety here later today here at the Voice America Influencers channel. Also on Apple, Spotify, and our Facebook page at Sustainable Success 2017. We highly encourage you to listen to this first segment that if you're just joining us, lots of great information, kind of laid down the foundation to everything that we're talking about. And now we're going to be talking about some of the things that you can actually utilize to implement the leadership process to be more effective in your business, personal life. And again, if you're playing a sport. So all of these things apply to so many different areas. So Coach Jim, you have leadership keys that really that you have been using for quite some time. Can you talk about how many leadership keys are there first? And if you could go through each one to discuss how they kind of impact each other in sequence.
Sure. So I have 7 keys in leadership, and I'll go through and I'll share a little bit about each one and try to give you an illustration or a story about it. So the first one is clarifying your vision. You know, without vision, the people will perish, as the Bible says. But when I delve into vision, what I'm talking about specifically, when I try to teach people, is that, first of all, I mentioned earlier, is the first person you got to lead is yourself. So I really push people strongly to get clarity of their personal mission statement. Okay. And we're going to get into, your team or company mission statement in a moment. But I think that's where it starts, is you have to have clarity, because I really believe that you have to know what you stand for, and people that you work with that you're trying to lead, they got to know what you stand for. So that was one of the things when I gained clarity and took over those 3 other programs after my opening disaster, was that I was very clear about what I was all about. And my mission statement, just for example, is to be an outstanding role model that makes a positive difference in the world by helping others make their dreams come true. And when I shared that, to help people is, I think that you just start with just a simple question: why were you put on this earth? And then secondly is get clarity on what are your 3 or 4 most important core values. And then I suggest to take some time and really try to continue to ask yourself that question: why were you put on this earth? And then with your most important core values, try to put into a sentence or 2 what you're all about, and then stand by it, share it, and be clear about it. Because when I gained clarity about I was, just give you a quick example, like to be a great role model, then I knew I had to do certain things a certain way. Otherwise, I wasn't a very good model, and I got a service mindset. So example, my core values is I respect everybody. Number 2 is that I constantly look to grow. And number 3 is I want to serve others. So that's what I tried to do in implementing my personal mission statement. Then the second part is, in fact, I just talked to a company last week in Ohio. And what I really, I read out their mission statement. I said, it sounds really good. And our mission statement for our team is, we got everybody involved in the first team I took over when we got into the team mission. And they said, Coach, we want to win, because they had only won 2 games a year before we got there. And I said, well, I want to win too. But I've done a lot of studying of successful teams, both in athletics and in business. And if your only objective is to win the game, or your only objective is to make profit, those are usually short-lived. You got to be bigger than that. So I said, so we decided we wanted to be winners on and off the court. And I kid people, but what I talk about is you are the CRO is the leader, and that means Chief Reminding Officer. You have to consistently remind, and everybody should be clear about what the mission is, and are you guys living it day in and day out? And so it was my job to be clear about what does it take to be a winner on the court. Winning this game is part of that, but also, are you a great teammate? Are you someone that can handle adversity and be a good sport? Are you someone off the court that will do your best in the classroom, that will contribute to our community and be an effective community member? Those are the things we were trying to teach as far as what it takes to be a winner on and off the court. So that's where I think it all starts. It's great. I've seen businesses I've come into and they have got it on the wall. I've seen T-shirts, but really the key is, does everybody buy into the mission? And number 2, are they consistently living it? Otherwise, you're going to have people go in all different directions and be like herding cats, and that's not so effective. The second key I talk about is building trust. And I usually ask this question in my leadership presentation is, how many believe trust is important in building a successful team? And I get usually 100% hands. So there's no one that says that, trust isn't important. So, but then my challenge to people is, do you have a plan on how you're going to build trust with your team? Because it just doesn't happen. It's got to be intentional. Yeah. And so the 3 keys that I share in building trust is, 1, that we wanted to, because we took over 3 losing programs, we were able to turn around fairly quickly. And so we said the first thing we were going to do is we need to align our words and actions. Illustration. I was real big on being on time. And we practiced a lot before school, which, they early on, they didn't like that so much, but then it became a badge of honor because, we were the only ones practicing before school. But, if we were expected to be there, in fact, I gave them funky times. Like we were starting at 6:57. And, so they made it very specific, but it was a way they could remember a little bit better. But, and then, of course, as the leader, I always had to be, I always kidded people, if you can't be on time, be early, and so I was always early because that was important to me to set that standard. Secondly, is after aligning your words and action, is I think you got to build on telling each other the truth. And what I found is people that are highly effective, that are high producers, they want to know the truth. And that's why we talk about getting the right people on the team. And so sharing the truth with each other, I think, is really important. Then the third thing is, because we took over programs that were bad, is we really focused on getting their self-esteem up by catching them doing right. And I gave you an illustration earlier that you should praise when they deserve it, and also praise specifically so they understand what they did right, so they'll do it again because they like that praise. Okay. And so I think those are things that you can do in building trust. And then, leadership is building relationships. So, one of the things that I did, I learned this from a business book, and it was very powerful, is that the power of recognizing people's personal things. Example is birthdays. So I had 5 teams under my supervision. I had a 7th grade team, 8th grade team, 9th JV, and varsity. And, we had a coach for each of them, but I was the overall leader. And so when all those teams were chosen, I put into my calendar notebook every kid in our program, those 5 teams, their birthday, and I would send them a personalized birthday card. And, I always kid people, you know what? That day, the only birthday card they got from school was from Coach Johnson. No one else knew it was their birthday, other than maybe their close friend.
Yeah.
And so those are little ways that, you can do that. And that helps build a relationship, because they know the old adage, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yes.
And recognizing things about people, I think, is very powerful. Going into the third one is creating an edge. And I believe as a leader, you have to be someone that continues to grow yourself so you can find ways to grow your team. And I'll give you a couple examples. One of the things we did that we were really ahead of the curve was that, I felt our teams weren't strong enough physically. So I hired a strength coach. Now that's very in vogue for all levels of basketball now, but back, many years ago, it was not. But I brought in a strength coach. So I talk about, one of the ways we created Edge is I found people that fit our team and our coaching staff. So I used other voices. It wasn't just me. I think it's a very powerful leadership lesson. Number 2 is we spent a lot of time teaching our players about goal setting. And I'll just give a quick little activity that we used to do with our players. We would ask them to write out their 3 most important goals in 45 seconds. Then we gave them an activity that night, and we wanted them, and we asked them to add some goals after that. And I would meet with players one-on-one, so I would find out their individual goals and how they align with the team goals. I think that's really important. But what we would do is we would teach them to get index cards, and we wanted them to take charge of their life. So we would ask them in the first card to write out, I am responsible. Second card, I like myself, because you got to care about yourself so you can care about others. And then write out your goals. And we taught them how to, we don't have time right now, but, they have goals that are measurables and specific, SMART goals. We can get into that. And we taught them that, and we really tried to reinforce with them about, the mental piece of the game, where you got to believe in yourself. You got to know what your goals, we used to give our team a quote every day. And when we did our goals week, I would always say, when you think it, ink it. Or as the late great Zig Ziglar said, you can't hit a target you don't have. And that's why clarity of writing things down is so powerful. And there's other things you certainly do. And as something as a coach, I was always trying to find little ways that we could create an edge. I'll give you one last example. We were one of the few teams that used a lot of mental imagery. We did imagery before every single game, and it really built up. And I'll give you a quick story. my last season, I had a really good player. Actually, he played with the Rockets, not this past year, but the year before. He had a great career at University of Vermont. But his name was Anthony Lamb. And Anthony got fouled in our sectional semifinal his senior year with 6 seconds to go in the game on a 3-point shot. We were down 3. He makes all 3, and we win the game in overtime. And afterwards, one of the reporters comes up and said, Anthony, how did you make all those shots in that pressure situation? He goes, we did mental imagery before every game. I saw myself making that shot time in and time out. There's no doubt I was making those shots. So, again, those are things you can do as a leader to create an edge. 4th key is effective communication. And, that's huge. I'll say 2 things. I really believe it's important as a leader, you get better and better with leading, by becoming a better public speaker. But always remember this: words do matter. Words can help, and boy, words can hurt. So I think it's really important that you have clarity of how you communicate. But the most important thing that I really learned, and I was not good early in my career, is the fact that the old adage, you have 2 ears and only 1 mouth. So you got to listen more than you talk. And when I started to do that, in fact, I told you I talked to that company last week. And one of the things that changed is we used to run captains meetings every Monday. And it was a great way to communicate to the leaders of our team. I was trying to build them as leaders. But early in my career, I will always come in with agenda, and I would just share ideas. In the second half of my career, I came in with a different thing. I came in with like 4 questions, like, how's the team chemistry? Is there anyone that's really struggling now? How can I coach you better this week? What should we focus on? And then I just listened. And boy, it really, because when they feel like they got ownership of what's going on, and your people in your business or on your team feel like they're contributing and they're being heard, boy, that's a pretty powerful thing. So I think that's really something to think about. 5th one is lead by example, which, is pretty simple as far as saying it, but I've seen too many leaders that do a very poor job with this. And I'll give you one quick story. As you mentioned, in my bio, it took us, J-Mac's senior, when he had that special game, was our first Section 5 championship. And but one of the things I realized, because we had made the sectional semifinal 6 times in my career before we broke that barrier and finally won our first championship. But what I realized is I felt like I was a good role model, except for one small segment of the season. Guess what that was? That was our postseason tournament, because I wanted to win so badly that I was putting so much pressure on myself. Who else do you think I was putting pressure on, Chris?
The team.
The team, and I was not the same person. I would get agitated. I didn't handle adversity well. And it reflected, we lost a lot of close games, and something I really did a lot of reflection. Well, when we finally had that breakthrough, we actually, in our semifinal game and in the final game, 2 a little bit different. The semifinal game, we were up 10 at halftime, blew the entire lead. But this time we're losing the 4th quarter, but this time I was more positive. The kids responded. We rallied, won. In the championship game, my first championship game, we're all fired up. We're getting all this publicity because of the J-Mac story. We play in a sold out arena of 10,000 people. We had played that team twice that we played in the finals. We had split with 2 close games. We start the game, we're down 12-3 after 4 minutes. I'm like, oh my gosh, that pregame speech didn't work. But again, this time I was better. I held it under control, and the kids responded. We ended up winning late in the game. And, it just goes to show you, we always talked about with our players, and leading by example, is you are always on stage. And I want to really focus with the people listening. If you're leading, they're watching you, and if you're not aligning your words and actions, as I talked about in building trust, you're going to get yourself in trouble for sure. The 6th key is what I call leaving a prophet. And that simply is our leadership philosophy. And there's 2 segments to that. One is, I think as a leader, and I mentioned this briefly before, is that you got to keep growing. You got to keep getting better. So I've really pushed people to be intentional about their personal growth. And I talk about, like, I'm an avid reader. I believe leaders are readers. So I get up every morning. The first thing I do is I read. In fact, I average to read a book every week. And for, any of the listeners that follow me on social media, I do a book recommendation every Wednesday. Number two is I've turned my automobile into a library on wheels. I'm always listening to audio programs. I'm a podcast junkie. And then the last one, I call it the 2-for-1, where, when I exercise or I'm out cutting the grass, I'm always listening to a podcast, so I'm feeding my mind. And that's, and I am intentional. My goal is to feed my mind minimum 75 minutes every day. So I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing is we're getting clear about your leadership philosophy, which is everything we wanted to touch, we wanted to make better, not worse. And in fact, that we meant we wanted to turn to gold and not garbage. And I'll just give you a quick illustration. When we went to a opponent's school, we would go in the locker room. And if I saw a piece of trash on the ground, what do you think I did?
Picked it up.
I picked it up because, one of the things I was really stressing our players, everything we touch, we're going to make better. And, just when you start with simple things like that, it really manifests into much bigger things. So those are that's 6. And I know we're getting close to the end of the segment. I'll just mention the 7th, and we can delve in a little bit deeper after. And that is servant leadership, which is now becoming a very big word in leadership. And I'll say this, and we could delve in a little bit more deeply in our last segment if you like. But I think the huge thing about it is that that's really what I believe leadership is when you are the servant to your people instead of you thinking that they're serving you.
Yeah, I love that. Jim, those 7 leadership keys were spot on. It makes so much sense in how they flow in that sequence, like you said, and how impactful they are as a whole. Could you just sum up in 30 seconds those keys, and again, the impact and difference it can make in terms of wherever this would apply in any situation? About maybe 20 seconds.
Yeah, so I think just the thing that I brought out to everybody is that we can review those quickly at the next segment.
Yeah.
Basically, the concept is you got to start by being able to lead yourself.
Yeah.
Then through that is you got to find ways that you can bring the right people on the team and build relationship with them so that they know you care. And, those are all things that we really try to weave in, and getting clarity about who you are, what your team mission is, and doing that consistent. That's the huge thing. And
consistency. I like you to talk about that when we come back after the break, because that word is so important.
Yeah.
So we got to go to break. We're here with Coach Jim. Again, we're talking about leadership lessons from half court. You're going to be hearing more. We got to go to break. We'll be right back.
All right, you guys are all clear. I'm saving this one up right now too.
Okay, perfect. That was great, Jim. So yeah, if you wanted, we could expand on the servant when we come back, and then talk about consistent, because I think consistent, that's the thing a lot of people miss out on. They think, I did it yesterday, but I didn't do it, I didn't do it every day. You know what I mean? Right. It's like that consistency is what builds up that flow, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Perfect. All right. Let's see he's downloaded and we can kick into the last segment. Just remember, the last couple of minutes, we'll want to make sure we have where people know how to find you and all that.
Sounds great.
We all set?
Yes, sir. You ready?
Yep. Here we go.
All right. Coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back to Sustainable Success. We're here with Coach Jim Johnson talking about leadership lessons from half court. If you're just joining us, you could listen to this show in its entirety here later today at the Voice America Influencers channel under Sustainable Success, or at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and our Facebook page at Sustainable Success 2017. Come by our Facebook page, join, engage, interact, get to meet new people, and share with us what is important to you. And we're there to help you move your business to the next level. Again, that's Sustainable Success 2017. Again, our show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct, a new social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together and an opportunity to meet new people. It is a membership-based program, takes all the noise out of social media, but it's also a great place to tap into resources, things that you would normally not be able to get on your own personally and in your business. Feel free to check them out at alumnidirect.com. So, Coach Jim, you were just finishing up on the leadership keys. There was 7, and you were just finishing up on servant leadership. And then you also said a key word at the end, that word consistency. And it's like the glue that kind of makes everything stick with these 7 leadership keys. Can you talk, just if you like to expand on the servant leadership and talk about the importance of consistency?
Sure. So just to expand on the servant leadership is that, the traditional pyramid leadership was the leaders up on top of the pyramid and everybody else is below him or her. And so the concept is that you're going to flip the leadership pyramid so that your concept is, how can I serve and add value to the people on my team or who I'm leading? And I think that's powerful. I used to quote Dr. Martin Luther King's, one of his statements is, we can all be great because service leads to greatness and we're all capable of serving. So I think when you really develop that mindset in that you're going to serve your people, and I think the huge other thing about that is, I believe the best leaders develop leaders, and I'm really proud that a number of my staff have gone on to lead other basketball programs. Also, a number of my players have had success in life. So, I'm proud of that. And I think that's important, that you're teaching them how to lead themselves so they can influence and lead others. Going to that word consistency. Well, one of the things, that I think is so powerful is that, often I'm asked 2 questions. How do you get to the top? And we went through a lot with that process of the 7 keys. But the second question is the more difficult one, is how do you stay at the top? Because certainly we see it in athletics, we see it in business, we see it in almost every situation. Music, the one-hit wonder is, you win a championship in athletics, and then you don't see that team back. Where do they go? And, you see that in business, a team or a restaurant that was great for a year, and then all of a sudden they're out of business. What happened? So I really believe that comes into that word consistency, is that having clarity of those keys we talked about, with the focus on what is your leadership philosophy, is that, and I talked about that as the leader, you got to keep growing and getting better. You can't stay the same. And that's what happens too often, is people get where they get complacent and they just kind of say, okay, we won it, we're going to do the same thing. No, you got to get better. And that's something I really did after season. Okay, and I really talked to our players, how are we going to get better? Because everybody's after us now. We got the target on our back. We've won the championship. And so what I'm really proud of, Chris, is in our last 11 years that I coached, after never making the finals before Jason's senior year, we made 8 finals and won 6. Wow. And so I could talk with some confidence that what we did, because we kept growing to get better and keep pushing our guys to get better. And then again, as a leader, finding ways from that leadership philosophy, how are we going to continue to do things the right way? And, one of the things that, sometimes it's boring, but I truly believe this. In fact, I just heard a story the other day that I thought was so powerful. I was listening to a guy talk about the Golden State Warriors, and he says, I couldn't believe it, because this guy was a shooting coach in the NBA, and he went and watched Golden State practice a couple of times. He said their first 45 minutes, all they did was basic fundamental drills, form shooting, footwork drills. And they're right on. Because the teams that play the best consistently are the soundest in the fundamentals. They do things right. And that's something that, we really did. And I'll give you one little example.
Yeah.
In basketball is that we really tried to teach our players to be multidimensional. And what I mean by that is, like the guy I mentioned that made the NBA, Anthony Lamb, he was 6'6", but we taught him how to dribble. We taught him how to shoot. And so he became much more dynamic, and he was really good around the basket, don't get me wrong. But, we wanted him to be a complete player that can do a lot of things. And that's what we try to teach all our players. And one of the things that why I believe we were very effective is because they built into the team thought And we were consistent with the fundamentals. Guys knew how to pass, knew how to dribble, could make open shots. And those are something, how to defend, what is your philosophy and how you're going to defend. And again, those are things as a leader, you got to sell. I know we picked on I picked on the Nets some, but it's something that I don't believe their coaching staff sold, that what, we got to play great defense. Because what was really deceiving, again going back to Golden State, when Golden State won those championships, now they scored a lot of points, so it was deceiving. But if you look at the metrics of their defense, they were always one of the best defensive teams too. And people forget that because they scored a lot of points. But you realize they were very good at the fundamentals. And it's something we can learn for. And that goes back to that big C word that you brought up. And that is
consistent, the discipline and consistency. You just made me think about that, the fundamentals, like, even the late, great Kobe Bryant, even after all those years, he would be at the basketball court at 3:30 in the morning, doing the fundamentals, like, that's things that he learned when he was in grade school. He was still doing, even at the time, having a Hall of Fame career, still doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think those are things you got, because one of the things I talked about is that, as creating an edge as a leader, you got to be, one of the things that always fascinated me and still fascinated me today, now I speak to a lot of businesses as well as, athletic teams and that type of thing, is I always go back to, what are the greatest people in your sport, or what are the greatest leaders in business? What are they doing that's a little bit different? And I'm telling you, a lot of it is they're clear about who they are, they're consistent about who they are, and they're willing to do the, what a lot of people think is the little things, but like things like getting up and having a really good morning routine, having a good evening, how to end your day. Those are the things that people, I believe, that are highly successful have clarity of how they start the day, have clarity of how they're going to finish the day. And I could get into a little bit, but like one of the things I really try to teach people is, time block. If you want, when I talk about leading by example, one of the things that's important to me is I wanted to be fit. So I blocked out a period of time every single day to work out. And, and because that's a priority to me, if I'm going to lead by example, and you know what, I'm not saying there's successful people that aren't in shape, as far as like their leaders, but that wasn't me. For me, if I'm going to lead by example, then I've got to be, take care of myself.
I second that. I'm the same way.
But it's hard for me to say that, because I drove our players hard. We worked very hard. But like, I always kid people that, when we go up in the weight room and I would go through a core workout with them. And it's funny because, my players at the end of my career, I was getting older. They were better basketball players than me. But you know what? I could go up in the weight room and still beat their butts in a core workout. It's because I was fit. I took care of myself, and it wasn't something they had spent as much time on. So I think those are things as a leader, going back to what we mentioned earlier is, if you have a strength in a certain thing, then, that's something you can use to your advantage to help you become a more effective leader.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's so key. And I love what you talked about, the foundation, a daily routine, so critical, and not only a personal routine, but even routines that could be, as a team. It could be like in the workplace, having a daily huddle, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes to get on the same page, understanding what your duties are in your roles that day. So there's no miscommunication, no breakdowns and all that. Or you offset that. So I think that's really, really important. Jim, anything else that you would like to share from what you've talked about these leadership keys? We got about 3 minutes left, and I want to make sure we have at least a couple minutes to let people know about you and what you're up to. Sure. Any final comments that you'd like to share about what you talked about today in the area of leadership?
I'll give you a couple quick wrap up. One would be I really want to emphasize the people that they are really clear about their personal mission, know their why, and their who. Who are they? I think that's really important. Number two is developing consistent habits that are going to take you where you want to go, and teach those habits to your team. I think that's really powerful. And then the third thing I'll say, you had a great point about daily huddles, or one-on-one meetings. I did a lot of like short meetings, just checking in with people, and just simple questions like, how are you doing? How can I best support you? What can I do to be a better coach for you? So just really, those can be 5 to 10 minutes, but boy, those are powerful because people really believe that you do care about them. And as a leader, you should care about them.
Yeah.
Or they're going to go astray on you. So
I love it. Jim, anything, I want to thank you for number one, for taking time out of your schedule to be here and sharing with us this valuable topic, because it's so important in so many different ways. Let people know what you're up to, and where they can get in contact with you, anything that you'd like to provide them.
Sure. So the simplest way is that my website is coachjimjohnson.com. That way I wouldn't forget it. And on that, we have a free newsletter. People can sign up. My book actually is still on there, and we're selling it at a discount. And I give a free bookmark if people are interested in purchasing the book. We're really proud of that. I also do a weekly blog they can sign up for that's also free. And then follow me on social media. As I mentioned, I do a success thought and a leader either video or blog or something every single day on my social media. I'm really proud. We started, one of my goals now is to help young and emerging leaders. So I started a podcast with two other college professor and a young guy called the Limitless Leadership Lounge. We've had some really wonderful guests. In fact, we just interviewed 5 high school students yesterday. It's coming out next week that we just had a great time with that. So, listen to our podcast and, connect with me. And then I was doing a lot of speaking around the country until the pandemic. I do virtual, and but I'm back out now speaking. I do leadership, teamwork, inspirational. And then I actually, last one is I started an inclusion speech called Who's Your JMAC? And
wow, I love it.
So that's something that I just started doing. And so I'm excited to be out and help people. So have people look me up. I'd be glad to help them any way I can.
Wow, I love it. Well, we highly encourage everybody it's listening, and those that will be listening later, get in contact with Coach Jim. If you're a sports guy and you want to talk about leadership there, great. If it's business, I'm sure Coach Jim, you welcome those questions and calls. So get to know Jim, reach out to him at his website. Also check him out on LinkedIn as well. And he's got a book out there. Definitely get your hands on that. I know for me, it was a great read. Coach Jim, thank you so much again for taking time to be here with us. I want to thank you again. I just really got so much, me personally, here today, so much stuff that really solidified either things I knew, but things that I did not know that really going to help elevate my game, so to speak, in this case, in coaching and business and so on. So thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Chris. It was great, and look forward to keeping our relationship and communication going.
Absolutely. Well, listeners, we want to thank you each and every week joining us here, The Sustainable Success Way. Again, this show would not be where it's at if it wasn't for you. We are committed to your success and your growth, both personally and in your business. This is why we bring in guests and experts like Coach Jim, because they're not only sharing from a business perspective, but personal experience. This can apply in our everyday lives. So we are committed to keep doing that. If you have any suggestions or any recommendations, feel free to reach out to us at the Voice America Influencers channel, or drop me a line at chris@christophersalem.com. Well, everyone, have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next week.